countdown to the last comic shop in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Live from the elegant pump room of the magnificent Palmer House, high atop Chicago, it is the last comic shop, and we now proudly present the song stylings of one, Michael J. Wood.
Thank you, and welcome to Oktoberfest, where we flip between German and Russian accents because we're bad at this. And our first tune is Dead Batman.
Fair and square, Peterman.
I'm the host with most, Danny Larson. That was Michael J. Wood. That's your middle name, right? I'm getting it right? J is your middle name, right?
Jason.
Yeah, see?
Yes.
So I did get it right. And we've got J. Andrew Scott, and we've got Chad Smith.
Chad Smith.
I've got a J in the middle there, too.
Oh,
Chad
look at you! It's like synergy. It's all good.
It's your
The
thing.
Synergies.
Synergies. I love it.
All right. Thank you for coming back to the Last Comic Shop podcast for another week. This week's show, we've got another zombie-related book. If you didn't get enough of those zombies a couple weeks ago when we did Marvel Zombies 3, now we've got DC's version with DCeased. So, yeah, we'll be getting to that in just a second. But speaking of Oktoberfest, I thought that it was a good opportunity, given the fact that there's another thing that happens in the month of October other than Halloween, that maybe we can talk about that for a little while, because I've got a little bit of Halloween fatigue after the last couple of weeks. So we're going to talk about Oktoberfest, because I enjoy drinking some brews, and our wonderful J.A. Scott has some facts about Oktoberfest that we hope to lay on all of our Last Comic Shop listeners.
Which I'm excited about, because all I know about Oktoberfest is involves barrels and lederhosen, and so that's what I brought, and I think I'm getting splitters.
Well, you're not supposed to wear both. Like, you're not supposed to wear like just the lederhosen and just the barrel. Like, it's.
I think if you don't wear both, then you're going to get more splinters.
Yeah. I just need thicker lederhosen. It's already bad. It could just get worse.
Real quickly, before we get into the Oktoberfest, though, Chad, do you enjoy the pumpkin beer? Are you one of the pumpkin beer aficionados, or no?
There was one that I really, really enjoyed back in the day, but that establishment has since deceased. No. Yeah, it's done. So that pumpkin beer is gone. So it's okay, but it's not my favorite anymore.
J.A., pumpkin beers.
No. I put them in the same category as pumpkin spiced latte. That's also a no.
Mikey.
Pumpkin beer, I'm not really sure to be. Yeah, I had one called Pumpkin that was awesome, but I'm a pumpkin spice basic bitch, man. I put on my Uggs. I do. I put on my Uggs, and I put on my yoga pants and my big heavy sweaters, and I go to Starbucks and I get me some pumpkin spice. The spice must flow. I am the Kwisatz Haderach, or however it's pronounced. I love the spice.
Wow.
Love it. My eyes glow blue all fall. I am Fremen. It's wonderful.
Speaking of the Pumpkin, last year I had the brewery that makes Pumpkin. They also came out with a pumpkin flavored whiskey, and I had that.
Ooh.
And I actually liked that more than the beer, because I don't know why. I just thought that like the pumpkin flavor with the whiskey was actually a more interesting, combination than. Because I'm not a big pumpkin spice fan, and I'm not a big pumpkin beer fan. I like Oktoberfest though. I really do. I love a harvest time beer.
Coleslaw that doesn't taste like coleslaw. Yum.
Yeah. The pumpkin spice conspiracy is like the best marketing thing I've ever seen, because you can get cinnamon now. Like, you can go get it. Like, all of these things are available to you. It's not like cinnamon, allspice, and nutmeg disappear.
Yeah. Pumpkin. Pumpkin in the pumpkin spice.
That's right. No pumpkin at all. And you can actually get pumpkin all year too. It's in cans. You can just get it. Like it's already mashed up or whatever.
Well, one thing that you can't get all year is Oktoberfest, right? So, J.A., why don't you lay on some fun facts about Oktoberfest. Like, for example, where did Oktoberfest start?
Well, Oktoberfest started in Bavaria, as I'm sure most people know. But what most people may not know, it was originally a horse race.
Ooh! Were they champing at the...
Oh, you know it. So it was a horse race to celebrate the wedding of Prince Regent Ludwig of Bavaria, who was later King Ludwig I, and Princess Therese of Saxony-Hildburghausen. They were honored with a huge horse race, and they were married on the 12th of October, 1810. With festivities taking place on the 17th October on the grounds of their castle.
Okay.
And people wore barrels and lederhosen to the wedding?
Nobody wore a chicken hat either. Like, it was fine.
However, in 1810, after the wedding, everyone said, "That was awesome. We want to do it again."
And so they just kept on getting drunk every year around this time.
So then it went from being a wedding to a Landwirtschaftliche Verein in Bayern, which is the Bavarian Agricultural Association, basically celebrating all things Bavaria.
So it turned into a county fair.
Yes.
Okay.
However,
everybody can get behind that.
Just 3 years later, it had to be canceled because of the Napoleonic Wars.
Well, you'll have that.
I don't know, though. I mean, that would still be a reason to drink, right? I mean, Napoleon.
I don't know. You get one case of chafing from these hoes and you can get pretty angry.
People aren't usually celebrating during the war, but after the war, at the conclusion of the war, it started up again and was made a top priority in 1819 because of the amount of crowds it was guaranteed to draw and the amount of wealth it generated for the city. Been going on ever since, obviously, probably with the exception of World War I and World War II, when it was stopped because of horribleness.
When the Germans tried to ruin everything. That's right.
So the other question I had is, like, again, everybody equates Oktoberfest with, like, sausages and pretzels. If you're in the, let's have some bratwurst or knockwurst or whatever. Actually, that's not the most famous food there, right? It's like actually one of the first foods was, wasn't it chicken?
Yes. In 1881, they opened a roast chicken stand there. I don't know if it was a precursor to KFC or not, but or Kenny Rogers, probably.
And is that why they had to hire all the polka bands for the chicken dances?
Oh, yes. Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, if you're going to be drinking, I mean, you need food, right? Like, so, like, this was brilliant. Like, opening up a fried chicken stand or roasted chicken stand, I guess. Whoever did that, man, they should win the Nobel Prize.
My father lived in Germany when he was in the Air Force, and he almost starved to death in the first week because every time he went into the restaurant and asked what the best food was, they said it's the worst.
You're the worst.
Good night, everybody.
That's just terrible.
So now it is the world's largest folk festival. Attracts over 6 million people annually, breaking new records for beer consumed and chicken devoured. So there you go. If you are into drinking beer and or chicken, I suggest you head over to Bavaria and get yourself some chicken and beer.
And there you go. And in the spirit of this book, grab yourself a giant chicken leg and tear into it with your zombie faces and get to it.
Yes, but they're not zombies.
They're not zombies. That's right.
They're not. No, as we'll get to in just a second. Right after these commercial breaks, they are definitely not zombies here in DCeased. So let's go ahead and get to that book. So we'll be right back with our comic book review right after these ones.
Hi, it's Carlo Calantuan, last Comic Shop podcast listener and comic book tragic here in the Philippines. Mabuhay! When I'm in the US, I'm always on the lookout for a good deal on boards, bags, boxes, and all other manner of comic book related supplies. And that's why I love to go to bcwsupplies.com and use the promo code LCSPOD to get 10% off of all my orders. Not only do I get a discount on everything I buy at BCW, but I'm able to support the podcast when I use LCSPOD at checkout. So if you're in need of comic book supplies, head over to bcwsupplies.com and use the promo code LCSPOD. Oh, and guys, I'm still waiting for that Tressie review. Come on, when is it?
Hazel always knew there was something special about her cat Mooney, but she's still shocked when Mooney opens his mouth to tell her he's just had a vision. An ancient evil has awoken after centuries of sleep, and only one man can stop it, the legendary warrior Beowulf. Unfortunately, it's been over 1,000 years since he slayed a dragon, and he's been reincarnated as this guy. His name is Victor, and he's more unemployed millennial slacker than mighty warrior. Go to monarchpublishing.net for a free sample comic.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for our Read Pile Review. Yes, where we are going to tuck in to some wonderful zombie stuff. Tom Taylor really did a lot with this particular concept. He took something that could have been, I don't know, crap, and he made it really good.
He took something that could have been Marvel Zombies and made it.
Oh, come on. I do want to talk about that because, again, if you're a Last Comic Shop listener, just 2 weeks ago, we covered Marvel Zombies 3, which is one of my favorite books of all time. So, like, I don't think there's any better zombie book than that one. We're going to see, because evidently I'm going to probably get voted down. Fred Van Lente will have to come to my rescue about how his book is better. But in any case, let's get to who else worked on this other than Tom Taylor, and we'll get that directly from Chad. So, Chad, who else worked on the 6-part miniseries DCeased, which we're reading on today's program?
That's right. The 6-part miniseries DCeased, which led into the 3-part sequel miniseries DCeased, Good Day to Die, and the DCeased one-shots, and then DCeased Dead Planet, and then DCeased Dead World. It started a whole big thing of DCeased things. But for this first go-round, you have Tom Taylor on the writing duties. On art, your primary artist is Trevor Hairsine, and Neil Edwards helps out. James Heron chips in. Stefano Guiadano does inks. And then on colors, you have Rain Barreto. And on letters, we have Saida Temafonte.
So it's DCeased, because the whole time I was calling it DCeased.
Well, I guess if you want to get real literal and you look at the letters. No, I will say this. I forgot to mention that this is not only Chad's pick for the Halloween season, but Chad, this is also an important book because it is a part of the Year of Chad.
I know. One person we didn't mention on the art duties, it's the person that drew me to the book at first, is I've got the variant covers by Francesco Mattina. Dun, dun, dun. And recently, Marvel made waves by upping their prices $1 to $4.99 for their standard books. With DCeased, first couple of covers were regular priced, but then DC actually had started an initiative back in 2019 with like a cardstock cover where they raised the price $1. So they've been selling $5 books for quite some time, and the industry has borne it. I don't know if I've ever told this story on the podcast before, but I skipped this book the first time around. I'd heard positive things, but I'm like, oh, okay, zombies and Batman costumes. Yeah, sounds fun. What drove me to pick it up was the pandemic. I don't know if I should talk about this on the show because I don't like admitting to crimes on the pandemic. But during the pandemic, all the comic shops were deemed not necessary businesses and were shut down. And while that was going on, my comic shop stayed open.
Oh.
It was like a speakeasy for comic books. I felt like it was the 1920s, 1930s, but like my heart went out to all these people, not just comic shops, but a lot of folks in the pandemics that, with their businesses suffering, and some places were allowed to be open and some places weren't. But I was like, I need new stuff to buy. I'd still go in once a week and like sneak in and see what was there. And one of the books caught my eye were these beautiful Francesco Mattina DCeased covers. And I was like, yeah, okay. I know that Tom Taylor guy. I've seen his name before. I've heard good things. I'll pick it up. And wouldn't you know, I loved it. It's great stuff. But, were not that terrible tragedy and that, in my mind, like cool, subversive, speakeasy like atmosphere I may have kept on walking.
No, we're very glad that you didn't. And let's go ahead and get that 10-cent synopsis from Michael J. Wood on what happens in these 6 issues.
Darkseid wins and everyone else loses. I mean, for people who are really hung up on things, this is, I guess, saying it's an Elseworld story. Of course, it's out of continuity and it's its own story. Darkseid actually gets what he's always looked for. He figures out the anti-life equation, and it is literally an anti-life equation. And it is transmuted through both digital means and germ means, and it starts to overtake the planet Earth, including our favorite DC heroes who have to band together to actually save the world from probably the greatest threat that it's ever faced, and fail.
It's a very, very dark book. There are little rays of sun, but nothing ends well.
Unless you're Lex Luthor, because then not only are you the smartest man in the world, because Batman died.
Batman's still dead, right?
That was like the best line in the whole book.
But Superman dies too, so then you lose your main antagonist.
Yeah, that is true. If you were Lex Luthor, it was a banner day.
Kapow!
That's the thing. One of the wonderful things about this particular series is, again, first off, it does turn on its head the whole notion of, quote unquote, what is a zombie? Because, somebody says it at some point in the story is like, they're not really driven by hunger. They're driven by anti-life. Like, they just want people to die. And anybody that's infected with this just wants to kill other people.
And don't forget how it infects people. The metaphor.
Well, I was going to get to that last because of all the things in this particular book. There's like 95% of things I love, and then there's 5% what I hate, which is, and I really do hate the whole digital way that it transfers digitally. Like I still to this day, no, that's stupid.
It is a math equation after all.
Yeah. And how else do we spread hate these days but digitally?
Yeah, I get why he did it, but I just thought he should have picked either one or the other. I would have been fine if it was just all digital, but and he's just but we also got to do the regular zombie thing. And I'm just no, you got to pick. You got to pick one way or the other because this otherwise it's just no. But I will say this, and I think that I said this to Chad when he originally made me read it, that the main reason why this is so good is because Tom Taylor is pitch perfect with a lot of the character voices. He gets how characters would interact. And when things are so final, people are going to be coming to their ends.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, Hal Jordan bites it at issue 1.
Right.
Issue 1.
There's this heartbreaking scene where Superman goes back to Smallville and his dad's been infected with the zombie virus and he locks him back in the grain cellar or whatever. And his mom's we can't leave your dad behind. And Superman's Mom, Dad's not here. And he flies away. And I'm oh my God.
Spoilers, by the way.
It's the pitch perfect way that all of these characters talk and they interact with each other. And especially when there's stakes. You know what I mean? There's stakes involved in this book.
Not like the DC versus vampires. Not those stakes.
That was also really good too, though. That was really good.
It's fine. Yeah.
But I do want to start off with the guy that hasn't read as much DC as maybe Mikey Wood, who is our DC aficionado, and Chad Smith, and that's J.A. Scott. What are your thoughts?
I think I've been on record as saying that DC does these Elseworld stories better than Marvel. They don't worry about continuity. They give you a nice self-contained story. They don't care if they're killing the Earth or blowing up or destroying half of their heroes. Hal Jordan bites it in issue 2. Superman doesn't survive. Batman, I think he dies in issue 2 as well. Or the Green Arrow gets through most of the book, which is kind of great because even Batman's I didn't bother writing contingency plan if Green Arrow turns evil because
just hurts his feelings.
And there is, spoiler alert, there's a great moment at Green Arrow in issue 6 where he says, you, Batman. I made a shot half a mile away into Aquaman's head.
Yeah. And they go. I remember there was a big stink because Nightwing. Well, I mean, I know it's this way with Marvel, but usually with Marvel, it's like the female characters, like Dazzler and Jubilee and like fucking Squirrel Girl. Like they have rabid fan bases, right? Nightwing has this rabid fan base, and they were so pissed because he. Like the first one, like one of the first ones who's dead. But it's so incredible because Batman goes down, and it's the first time like you see these heroes that could, because you read comics and you're like, well, they're going to get out of this one. Even I did, like reading the course of it, I knew that when they were finding the Flashes, I'm like, oh, they're going to travel through time and they're going to stop it from happening. And that's not what happens. Like it's watching these heroes that can usually get out of anything, not get out of these things. Batman being so Batman, where he's like, I'm inside one of Mr. Freeze's costumes and I've lowered my body temperature so the virus slows down. Like he knows what he's doing, but he's like, I'm going to die. And like, sending the bat suit to Damian and Damian having to deal with, all of like his...
Mikey, you left out who kills Batman, and that's one of those Tom Taylor moments
with a shotgun.
Yeah,
shotgun.
And he says, "I'm sorry, son," and blows his head off. Like it's just like wrenching. Like but then like Alfred flying the Batwing. Like come on, like it's just so. Everything is so pitch perfect and incredible.
Even at the end when you think, okay, everyone's kind of died and they're fleeing Earth and it's become this. Everything is horrible. Yeah. But then Cyborg wakes up and he's like, wait a minute, no, I know the answer. I have to go get to them. And zombie Wonder Woman rips his head off and says, life is suffering.
I missed this the first time around. I think it was just because I bought the first Marvel Zombies and I was like, all right, that's goofy. The only thing, and I don't know if it comes up later on, I was waiting for Swamp Thing. Like I was waiting for Swamp Thing and the Green to do something because Poison Ivy does something with, like Poison Ivy's awesome in this and Harley's awesome in this. Harley's awesome because like out of all the characters, Harley's like the one who doesn't crack. Like
she's already cracked, right?
Yeah, so she's like, oh, everybody's dead now. Okay, and she's like, let's go bird hunting.
She's always one of those characters I feel like would fit in very well in a Mad Max post-apocalyptic universe. She feels like one of those, I don't know, playing a guitar on top of a truck with giant steel things.
Yeah, but no, Jay, we interrupted you. What was your take? Because I am interested too. Because in my mind, this is a super accessible book, but I'm also looking at it like, oh, he might not know who Damian is or who John is or, all that other stuff.
I don't think you need to know who those people are. You work out quite quickly that Damian is obviously Bruce Wayne's son and you've got Superman's got a boy. So if you didn't know that, the story presents itself. As I was saying before we got tangentially tangent, is DC does these stories really well where it doesn't worry about continuity. It doesn't worry about killing its characters. It just tells a very well-defined, self-contained storyline. I feel they do it a lot better than Marvel does, and this is one of the examples of that. I loved it. I thought it was much better than Marvel Zombies because they didn't pull any punches. Batman dies in issue 2, and then you've got no Batman. Hal Jordan gone. It was almost like they had this dartboard of DC heroes on the wall and just started throwing darts, and wherever the darts landed, that person died.
Yeah, now I will stick up for Marvel Zombies 3 because it was Marvel Zombies 3, and Marvel Zombies 1 and 2 had a chance to run roughshod with the Marvel Universe proper. And you'd get your moments with Zombie Cap and Zombie Spider-Man and all those heroes the public knows about. And by the time you get to Marvel Zombies 3, it's like the exact opposite of this, where you need the canon. You need to know who Jocasta is. You need to care about Machine Man.
Right. Well, I'm just going to simply say, like, this is it's the major difference between this particular book and the one that we did earlier. Not to say that it's not because I love that book. I love both of these books, honestly. But I just feel like they're different tracks. I was going to say DCeased is kind of more like if you wanted to sit down and you wanted to watch, I don't know, The Last of Us, right? Like that's your show. Versus like you're watching Ash versus the Evil Dead. One is like played for kind of laughs with some horror-related things. I mean, you get Machine Man riding Ghost Rider's And he says it handles like a shopping cart. That's played for laughs. Sure, there's some laugh moments and some witty dialogue in DCeased, but this is really gut-wrenching drama. When you put everything out on the table and you just lay every character bare and you say, no, like if Superman had to go run around killing every single person and had to like kind of like dehumanize or just shut himself down so that he didn't realize that's what he was doing. Like that's intense to think about. But it's just tracks. I hope that people understand that you can enjoy both because it's apples and oranges for me at least.
Right. The one thing I wanted to add too, this piggybacks off what you mentioned earlier, Andy, is that Tom Taylor just gets it when it comes to these characters. There are certain writers, like Mark Waid is one, where he just knows the essence of a character. You know, if Mark Waid is writing the book, you're going to get something that fits in with how you see that character, and it's going to be pitch perfect. And Tom Taylor does that in a way, and he's given the opportunity, because this is that Elseworld style story, to let things be the way they should be. Not only does he let legacy characters become legacy characters, you get to see John become Superman. You get to see Damian assume the mantle of Batman in this book. You also get like the Flash. The Flash should be a formidable opponent for Superman, right?
Yeah.
He never is. Never is, because DC can't let Superman look inferior to the Flash. But like in this book, Tom Taylor squares that up and it's like, no, Flash is going to be the guy that takes out Superman. On paper, that's how it should work. But for corporate synergy reasons, it never happens that way. But Tom Taylor, he does it every time. He did it here. He did it in Injustice. Like, he just takes these characters and be like, no, if this happened, you know, Green Arrow is going to be discounted, but he's going to, you know, show up strong in the end. Or this is going to be like, it's just everything goes the way that it should, even in these terrible stories.
I've never read Injustice either because I thought it was like a video game tie-in, so I just skipped it. I didn't realize it was a big, long thing.
And it should be garbage, but it's not.
And this is the first time that I've ever seen Martian Manhunter do anything of actual consequence and look cool while he's killing people.
Oh, yeah.
Lex Luthor, by the way, bites it through the Martian Manhunter.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing that works the best about this particular book, as somebody that's more of a Marvel fan than a DC, and I'm not going to say that this is always the case, but traditionally you got DC characters and they're gods. And sometimes it's difficult to give stakes to characters that are gods because they can pretty much god their way out of anything. But when you lay that bare and you remove the kind of the god aspects, like in the first, 15 pages, Darkseid bites it. Like even the main bad guy. Like
Darkseid is, Darkseid was.
Right, exactly. None of these characters are safe. And so when you remove that notion where like Superman can bite it, you know, Flash can bite it, Green Lantern can bite it, Wonder Woman can bite it, all of these characters, they're on the table and they could get the axe at any moment. All of a sudden, you're able to focus more on like them as people. They're not gods anymore. They're just people. They're people dealing with a terrible situation that keeps on progressively getting worse and worse to the point where their only option is to run away. Like not to fight it, to run. Like to run as fast and as far as they can. That's just gorgeous.
I don't know. It reminded me a lot of Star Trek First Contact. Picard is like doing everything he can to save the thing, and the human lady was finding like Picard blow up the goddamn ship. You know, like there's nothing left to do. You have lost, and that's what these people. I mean, they managed to, you know, save what, like 7 million people or something. Like very few people. They get off the planet. They do manage, but Earth is done. Earth is quarantined by the Green Lantern Corps who show up at the last moment, which is awesome. Yeah, the sun's going to die because Superman's draining it. It ends on a hopeful note, the same way Empire Strikes Back ends. What do we do now? And it's
go
and it really
go into Earth 2 because that's what DC does. When you're done with Earth, you go to Earth 2.
To go back to Andy's point about them being gods, it still works that way. You still have like their elemental forces where people rise up and fill the voids of all these other characters. And that's where the legacy guys come in. Yeah. And Yeah, and I still have to read the last chapter that just came out within the last year or so. Don't know exactly how everything wraps up. But this story, it isn't just here. They go throughout the DC universe. There's a mini series that goes into the villains and what all the bad guys are doing. You get all those Suicide Squad type bad guys becoming good guys and bad guys being bad guys. And like, I don't know. They touch all the bases of the DC universe. You get your Constantines.
Do you?
In.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, later on down the line.
Yeah, I was wondering, like, with like the Endless or anything like that, if they come in or what happens, you know.
Yeah, Tom Taylor, he touches all the bases. In a way, it's respectful, but it just feels right. The regular DC to me never feels as right as their Elseworlds tales, and this just feels like the way that it should be.
Yeah. Well, I guess before we get to commercial break, the last thing I wanted to ask is, again, we've got Mikey on our show, and he's the DC aficionado.
Oh.
And I just want to simply ask, as a story, it sounds like you really like this. It didn't bother you at all that, like, you know, all these characters just got axed or whatever?
No. Like, quite the opposite. I thought it was fantastic. I thought they took really good chances. I thought they did things that you kind of wouldn't expect. Like, you expect... Well, I guess if you've read stuff for long enough, you expect Superman to be one of two things. He either saves the day or sacrifices himself to save the day, right? You know?
Right.
And that doesn't happen in this. And like Batman, same way. Like there's very Batman-y moments where they talk about how Batman has contingency plans to off everybody. And that was what there's a whole thing about it in Grant Morrison's Justice League years and years
Tower
ago.
of Babel. It was actually Mark Waid.
Oh, was it Mark Waid?
Right,
okay.
Right after Grant Morrison.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Was that with Prometheus or whatever? I think. Or
yeah, it was around that time.
Yeah. So like Batman keeps a database on how to stop all of these people because that's something Batman would do because you never know when something terrible is going to happen. Like I mentioned, you know, there are people who are very upset about their favorite heroes going out in ways that they didn't want them to or didn't whatever. And I don't claim ownership or have any. I don't hold any characters precious. So I like when writers do something really different with them. Like I really love Tom King's Batman because he put Batman through the ringer, and people didn't like that, you know.
No.
And in that series, when Batman and Superman swap costumes, Superman's like, "Why is this so itchy?" He's like, "Yeah, I have it dusted with kryptonite just in case."
Yeah. Like it's cool because and you actually do feel. There are touching moments of, like you said, humanity. It brings them down to a human. You actually feel the love between some of these characters. Like everything is pitch perfect.
Right.
The voices are so right. And it makes me want to read more because to my knowledge, this is the first Tom Taylor thing I've read. I have a couple of issues of Nightwing that fall into like Fear State, like crossover, because I'm a big crossover whore. I have a couple of those things. But this is the first thing that I've read. I really, really love it. And I would love it if this was like the main continuity. That would have been awesome. But they're not that brave.
Yeah, right.
If it was, it wouldn't be as awesome as it is. Because, like I said, you wouldn't be able to have Flash.
All right. Yeah, it's true.
Better Superman. And you know what I mean?
Well, We'll be right back with more of The Last Comic Shop right after these commercial breaks with our rating of DCeased, as well as some recommendations of other books you can pick up while you're drinking your Oktoberfest or pumpkin spice beer. Stay tuned.
The Santos sisters are back with a brand new comic book. Can Alana lead the charge to find Todd's stolen car? How did Cinnamon Bun gain sentience in the Las Brisas Mall food court? And why is Ambar using drugs? All this and more in issue 5 of the Santos sisters. Find the Santos sisters comic book in your local comic shop or online at floatingworldcomics.com.
What if you could live with your favorite fictional characters and have a place to connect with the best nerdy neighbors and creators out there? Join us on your friendly neighborhood comic show. Every week, we keep hope, give help, and share comics with all. With games, interviews, and more, this isn't your average talk show. It's a living neighborhood. We are honored to be your CBC Comic Book Community Award-nominated nerdy neighborhood. So what are you waiting for? Come join the fun and join the neighborhood. It's your friendly neighborhood comic show every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern on YouTube.
All right, we're back with more of The Last Comic Shop, and it is now time for our ratings, where we don't need any pumpkin spice to get our listeners to continue listening to the show. We just have a 1 out of 4 scale that JA gives us that comes with a peppy sound effect. So, JA, what is our 1 out of 4 scale this week?
Well, I think this was underplayed, and we hardly talked about it, but the whole fact that everyone is getting infected by math. It's an equation that is killing people. So we're going to do 1 out of 4 math equations.
Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and start off. It's hard not to give it a 4. I loved like 95% of this, and then there was 5% I was just like, and I still don't like it. And so I guess that's going to be a 3.95 math equation.
But yeah, what don't you like? Is it just
I don't like the fact that it's transmitted both digitally and through bytes. Like, I get that, like, zombies have to do the biting.
If you're doing it by bytes, I mean, there's the whole data byte.
I thought that he should have picked one or the other. I get that it was like a math equation. I get that, like, Cyborg was originally the one that brought it in. I thought it was badass how it all started, though, because, like, Darkseid basically gets Black Racer to show up, and then he, like, stabs him, and he's like, give me some death! Yeah. You get a little my death fix thing. Like, I get it. Like, eventually that's the whole zombie thing, which is the terrifying part where people would eat each other. Cannibalism is just awful. But at the same time, like, But I will say, to those folks that were really pissed off that Nightwing was one of the first heroes to bite it, actually, that is one of the best parts of this book. Because what is Nightwing to the DC universe but its heart? It really, truly is. Whether it's Superman, whether it's Batman, the big two of the DC universe, they both rely on Dick Grayson to be their heart, that moral compass, the kid in all of us that comes through and says, let's work together, guys. So getting rid of him, putting him off the chessboard from the start, that ratchets up the stakes, like, incredibly. Plus the fact that I think that's who ends up offing Batman, is like his boys. His boys are the ones that bite him to death. It starts that snowball of, like, everything is on the board. And that's what I really do love about this. So I said it before, I'll say it again. It takes gods, and they basically throw all that god stuff out the window, and they're just like, okay, anybody can die. And that, as a narrative device, is extremely freeing, because it just allows you to just play with all the concepts. And so, yeah, it's a 3.95. I'm not good at math. J.A.
So this came out in 2019, but it really did sort of it was almost prescient the way it deals with things that we had to deal with in 2020 and beyond, not just pandemic versus zombie apocalypse stuff, but also then, the whole digital thing, looking what's going on with social media and the death of certain platforms. Maybe makes you want to look away. I did like, by the way, how Superman was able to overcome the whole digital thing by basically just staring at everyone with X-ray vision the entire time.
That was awesome.
That was a nice little touch. Yeah. So I think it's a 4. I loved it. As I said, it can exist by itself. If you don't have any care of what's going to happen to the heroes, or, you're not invested because it's not the main sort of DC universe, then you can just enjoy the story. And it's a really well done story. Everyone has their little moments. Except for Nightwing. I don't know if he has a moment.
He does. It's just a creepy one.
It's just a creepy one, yeah. He's no Scarecrow, though. And as we said, no Swamp Thing. Where was the green?
Yeah.
We just, I guess, Poison Ivy sort of filled the Swamp Thing void. Give it time.
Give it time.
He comes in later? Okay.
Yeah. Spoilers. So, yeah, I loved it. I'm giving it a 4.
Mikey, what did you think?
Oh, it's a 4, man. It's a 4. Like, every cliffhanger was a great cliffhanger. Every end of it, like, I would imagine reading this monthly, getting to the end of that page and being like, oh my god, and having to wait. Like, it was just really good. It had some of the best moments from some of my favorite characters happened in this. And me, I'm a big DC slut, and it hit every single G spot that I have. For lack of a better term, yeah.
And some really great covers and artwork. We hardly mentioned the art. We were talking about the story the entire time. The only off-putting thing I had was the first issue had a bit of a artist switch midway through the book.
Yeah, for the Dark Side stuff on New Genesis.
Oh my God, Cyborg was so good. He had so many good lines. When he's like, I try not to kink shame. He's like crucified on this thing, and he's still like pulling one-liners and everything. Like, oh God, I want to see this animated. Like, you'd think they'd do it if they haven't already. I don't know if it's on the slot, but I want to see like a DC movie of this. That would be great.
Heck yeah.
Well, it is the year of Chad, and I'm guessing you're giving this a 4, Chad?
Well, so it's funny. Like, it's been mostly 4s or close to 4s all around. I don't want folks to think this book is perfect, because I know in the past I've leveled criticisms where they'd be like, Chad, you're such a hypocrite. Does this book tell a complete story? No. When you get to the end of that, it is a cliffhanger. It is not complete other than everything is ruined, right? Mm-hmm. We mentioned the art inconsistencies. That is something that I've been critical of other stories in the past, where when you're swapping artists throughout, and for the most part, in the main books, it's usually Tom Taylor and Trevor Hairsine, with some other helpers along the way. Some of the offshoots, they'll bring in other artists throughout the tale, but I don't always like all those artistic jumps. It takes me out a little bit. So those are definitely legitimate criticisms. But at the end of the day, there's something about Tom Taylor's voice and his grasp of the DC universe, where if you watched Challenge of the Super Friends, you can get this book. If you watch the DCU movies, you could understand like the basic gist of this book and enjoy it. There's just something that he makes things so accessible. And I will say, as I've read through a lot of the other stuff, this is the high water mark. Like, they're diminishing returns throughout the remainder of the things, but that's because Tom Taylor's busy getting into the deeper necks of the woods of the DC universe and touching all of those different bases. So it becomes closer and closer to Marvel Zombies 3, but not quite anywhere near that. It's good. And Tom Taylor knows the notes to play. I was going to mention earlier when Mikey was talking about Green Arrow and how Green Arrow shouldn't be one of the last ones left, but he always is.
Yeah,
he always is. He's like one of those cockroaches where there's always going to be, he might not have both arms like in Dark Knight, but that's a note. It should be cliche, but the way Tom Taylor plays it, it's not. He knows how to do things the right way. And boy, is this series done the right way. So after pointing out all those critical elements, yeah, it's still a 4. This is great. It belongs as part of the year at Chad. I love it. I was so happy that I took a chance on it whenever I was like, well, I just need to buy something to help my comic shop guy out. And like, for the covers, don't judge a book by a cover. No, when it's DCeased and they have those Francesco Mattina covers, they're worth the extra $1 for the card stock. They're just beautiful and scary. And I wish they would have continued throughout. But anyway, 4 math equations.
Yeah. One of the last points I want to say is, Chad, to your point about like, this ends on kind of like a cliffhanger or whatever. Honestly, I think actually that's some of the strength of this particular book, because honestly, I don't really want to know how this is all resolved. The whole point of this book is like, I hate to say it, let's destroy the DC universe. Let's lay it bare and let's just see what happens next. And I feel like that's the strength of it. Like, I feel like rebuilding or finding out what's next, that would actually ruin it for me. So I may not read anymore. And I don't think I have. I think I read the first issue of the next one, Good Day to Die, because it had Mr. Miracle and Barda. And you know how I love Mr. Miracle and Barda. But then they died, and I got pissed about any case. Speaking of things we hope you don't get pissed about, is our recommendations. Hopefully you'll enjoy these recommendations. Other books that you can pick up at your local comic book shop in addition to DCeased. And we're going to go ahead and start off with J.A. Scott. So, J.A., what have you got for us this week?
So I am recommending Kali by Daniel Friedman and Robert Samelin. It is a graphic novel from Dark Horse Comics. This is very much sort of Mad Max, Fury Road type stuff. It starts out, this chick is almost murdered by her biker gang. They cast her out. She swears vengeance on everyone. And they're going up against a big bad guy, very, very much like Fury Road. And then she finds out that she's got like 24 hours to live because they stabbed her and the knife was laced with a poison, and then she just goes on this massive mission to bring down this evil corporation that's taking over the world and destroying everyone. So if you like post-apocalyptic type stories, if you loved Mad Max Fury Road, this one is for you.
Mikey, what do you got for us?
I am going to recommend, because we're talking about spooky stuff, I'm going to recommend Dan Brereton's Nocturnals. I don't know if you're familiar with Dan Brereton. He's an incredible painter. He painted wonderful things like Thrill Killer, the Elseworld story with Robin and Batgirl. He has done a World's Finest series for DC. He did the famous trading card for Star Wars that actually showed Boba Fett without his helmet on for the first time ever, that they retconned, because that's not what he looks like. But the Nocturnals, it is about a group of spooky superheroes, things like the Gun Witch and the Raccoon and things like that. And it's very, very Halloween-y, lots of pumpkins and lots of fall leaves and very pulpy and wonderful. And there's 2 omnibuses out. They're hardcover. You can actually buy signed copies off of budsartbooks.com for like $30 a piece for each one of the hardcover omnibuses, and they're so worth it. It's like such a great series, and it's so fun and wonderful. So the Nocturnals, that's my thing.
There you go. And Dan Brereton, speaking of spooky work, and years past, he worked on Frankencastle. Halloween fave.
Yes.
But yeah, I remember him from all the Marvel cards. He would do art for some of those too. Like,
excellent.
His style is awesome.
Make sure you go back and listen to our Frankencastle review from last year. Any case, my recommendation this week kind of goes along with the Halloween season, and it's one of my favorite characters that I think is very appropriate for this time of year, and that is the Scarlet Witch. If you know me, and you've been a Last Comic Shop podcast listener for a long time, I love the Scarlet Witch and Vision. They are my favorite comic book couple, and I recently picked up a gigantic trade called Vision and Scarlet Witch, and it has a lot of their stories, whether it was Giant Size Avengers where they first get married, whether it has the Steve Englehart 12-issue miniseries, which a lot of people know about. But I'm recommending the 4-part miniseries that preceded Steve Englehart's 12-issue run. And this one was done by Bill Mantlo, with art by Rick Leonardi. And anytime I can pump the tires of a Bill Mantlo book, I'm going to do so, because definitely we should be all supporting the wonderful work that Bill Mantlo has done over the years. But this one in particular is really, really good, because for the first time ever, they really just bring the Scarlet Witch and Vision down to earth and make them a real couple that has like a real family. And basically every single issue, sans the first one. The first one's really just, them moving into their house and they fight a wizard called Samhain, and it's kind of like spooky and trick-or-treaty, which is good for this time of year. The rest of the issues, though, deal with Scarlet Witch or Vision's extended family. Like, so issue 2 deals with the Wizard, who was originally supposed to be Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver's dad until they retcon that. Issue 3 deals with Vision's extended family, like his quote-unquote brother in Wonder Man, his father in Ultron, even his stepbrother in the Grim Reaper, and that's really a cool issue. But the main reason you should read this book is issue 4, which introduces the notion that the real true father of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver was Magneto, right? And that was the way it was for decades. Magneto was their dad. It made total sense, because if you look at Quicksilver and you look at Magneto, they pretty much look like the same dude. And so,
not the wispy hair thing again. Not the wispy hair. Art does not denote genetics.
Well, regardless, it all made sense. So you have that issue. I think it's called Revelations or whatever, and it's basically Magneto comes out and says, "Yeah," because it was at the same time that Magneto was making his face turn. In the mid 80s, he was going to become like the headmaster of the X-Men. And so like, this was kind of like, yeah, here's another thing we can do to humanize Magneto. We'll make him a dad. And then later they fucked it all up, and I goddamn hated it. But anyways, this is really good because it was still, while it was nice. And Vision and Scarlet Witch are a good couple, and so it was before John Byrne killed him. And so you should read it. 4 issues, and I think it's really, really well read. And the Rick Leonardi art is just great. Chad.
Okay, so I alluded to this earlier. My recommendation is going to be something that really shouldn't be as good as it is. It is Injustice, Gods Among Us, the comic book. Now, this ran for a ton of issues. They broke it up into years. Tom Taylor did the writing on years 1 through 3, and then Bruce Buccellato takes over. Sometimes, they were working in tandem. And it is the setup for basically the DC Comics Mortal Kombat game.
Round 1, fight!
And you would think, oh, this is just going to be a silly video game tie-in. But they gave it to Tom Taylor. You got pathos, you got heart, you got somebody who understood the DC universe. And basically, they take DC's cast of characters, they sprinkle in some Civil War elements, so you can get the fighting game. And you get the whole Batman side of things versus the Superman side of things. But then you have all those Tom Taylor moments. Like at one point, Damian sides with Superman. And there's a fight. And, Damian's fighting against Nightwing and Batman. And one of them dies because they slip on something and break their neck. And the fight just stops. But it's like, oh, my goodness. And so it should be this stupid video game. I can't get over that. It should be a stupid video game thing where people are, breaking backs and spines. And that stuff like that happens there, too. But, there are those moments of heart and realism. And, people always say, why hasn't Batman ever killed the Joker? The crux of the story is Superman finally kills the Joker. The Joker man, takes out Lois and takes out, the things that Superman cares about, and he goes crazy and then eventually becomes totalitarian fascist. But man, oh man, it's so fun to watch some characters turn and some characters not. And then there are moments like at one point, Alfred gets pumped up on super juice and fights Superman. There are all these moments that you just take your Oktoberfest beverage and hold it up in the air and be like, hell yeah.
Speaking of which, Chad, there's actually also other books in that Injustice thing that had no business being good, but they were super good. There was the Injustice
the Universe?
Yeah, Injustice versus the Masters of the Universe, where they tell the tale of why He-Man and Superman need Prince Adam and Clark Kent, because it makes them human. If you have godlike powers, you need that alter quote unquote ego to bring you back down to earth so that you can actually relate with the people you're trying to protect. And that's what Superman lost. That was another book. I was just like, this has no business being good, but it was really great.
No, it was something, I'll be honest, I found it on the cheap at one of my favorite discount outlets. And I was like, yeah, I'll read this just for fun. And after I read the first chapter, I was like, holy crap, I got to go back and get the second and the third one and the fourth one. And one of the artists may or may not be a terrible human being. So I would recommend, instead of buying it, borrow it from your library, borrow it from a friend. But it's worth your time. And it shouldn't be. But it is. And it's so funny that I like it so much because there's so much about it that I don't. I feel like a lot of that inspired some of the Snyderverse thinking about some of these characters. And, I hate that. But I like this story. The fact that it's Mortal Kombat style, we're going to break you and destroy you. I hate that. But I love the story. I don't enjoy those dark things. I like my DC characters to be hopeful and all that other stuff. But despite all those things being stacked against it, Tom Taylor, and this is where he put himself on the map for me, and it makes you care about the DCU. And it's you're like, man, oh day, if this guy ever gets his shot in a regular DC book, look out. And lo and behold, he finally got a shot on Nightwing. And it seems like he's taken over his own corner of the DC universe. He's got Nightwing now. He's got Titans. They're giving it to him, and it's well deserved. But Injustice, check it out from your local library, borrow it from a friend, buy it from a store, and then return it. But check out Injustice, Gods Among Us.
Right. And we hope that you check out more Last Comic Shop here in the Halloween season. As you're sitting out there waiting for the trick-or-treaters, make sure you throw on a Last Comic Shop podcast to keep yourself company. And you can rate, review, and subscribe over at our website, www.lastcomicshoppodcast.com, to do so. And one of the episodes in the past that you might want to check out is another Tom Taylor book that we did. That was Superman, Son of Kal-El. So, we did that book in a past episode. You might want to check that out if you really are enjoying Tom Taylor's work on comics.
And we did Nightwing, too.
We did Nightwing, too. We're all over the place with the Tom Taylors.
But yeah, and you can also find us on social media. X is still a thing. The Blue Skies.
Do you look at it and become a zombie? Maybe.
Yeah. Isn't that what's supposed to happen? I don't know. But we're out there. We have those polls on X. We have Golden Age covers on the occasion to help tuck you into bed at night. And worst case scenario, you can always find us back at the home base at www.lastcomicshoppodcast, where they can find what else, J.A.?
We also have links to our merch store. You can get T-shirts, tote bags, coffee mugs. This week only, Lederhosen.
Wonderful.
Since you have a barrel and don't want some splitters, we suggest you wear the Lederhosen underneath.
Can I get one of those hats? Can I get the hat with the feather? That's what I want. I don't know.
Isn't it a Tyrolean hat? It is a Tyrolean hat. Yes, there we go.
Yes.
And to go along with the Lederhosen and the hat, you could also get a wonderful Last Comic Shop shirt, all with the spookness, right, J.A.?
Yes, we've got, for the Halloween season, the Bats in the Belfry from the Last Comic Shop house on top of the hill, not a lighthouse.
We've got to fumigate. Got to call animal control, take care of this bat problem. But yeah, and speaking of problems, we want to make sure that it's not a problem for you to get comics from your local comic shop. So get out there. Our recommendations this week, including Injustice, Kali out of Dark Horse, Vision and Scarlet Witch, the saga of Wanda and Vision, where you can get that wonderful 4-part mini that Andy was talking about. It includes Dan Baraton's Nocturnals. But those are our recommendations for this week at your local comic shop.
Yeah, or local library. And until next week, I was the host with the most, Andy Larson. I was joined by Chad Smith, J.A. Scott, and the wonderful Mikey Wood. And we hope that you stay safe, stay alive, because that anti-life equation might get you. And remember that an apple a day will keep anybody away as long as you throw it hard enough.
I like that one.
Oh.
I actually no, I like that one.
Don't encourage him, Mikey. Don't encourage him.
I have to give credit where the other one sucks so bad. that one is so good.
The Last Comic Shop was a 2023 Black Angus production.